I think we're good.
Okay, so welcome. I see PTO is here. I see members of our fantastic staff are here. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, for those who don't know me, I'm Mary Bridget Burns. I'm vice chair. I haven't led one of these before, so I'm going to take a lot of correction from other folks. I think we can move to the approval of the minutes. We have 2 sets of minutes from November 7th to approve. Are there any motions or discussions about these minutes? Motion to approve? Second.
Just the regular, or you can clarify on the motion, you can motion to approve and second both the regular and executive all at once if you choose to. So we're just looking for clarification.
Mm-hmm.
Motion to approve both the regular and executive session minutes.
All in favor? Great.
Then comes your financial report. And our spending and revenues are, pretty much in line with previous years. We are still continuing to monitor that special education transportation line as well as the out-of-district tuitions. They are on page 3 of the expenditure report. That's where the tuitions are, sorry, the out-of-district tuitions. Transportation is on page 2.
Yes. So transportation in all facets, regular, special ed is, continues to be a challenge for us, both in utilization as every special ed placement requires. We've had a couple of changes, not significant this year, so that's good. A couple of some that were at our in-district placements that are have gone to the next level, maybe the collaborative, so there's a little more transportation. But it's really more a question of the cost of transportation any place is significantly up. We definitely blew this line out last year and probably the year before, so it's always one we keep an eye on. The only good news, or the reason Kristen and I sleep at night right now at this point, because we see that big negative that is projected. We've got a couple of contracting out because we are not able to meet all of the needs because of the increase with our internal staff, the Brimfield special ed crew. So anticipating worst case is what's here. As things shift, because it shifts so much in special ed transportation, we could possibly be able to bring something in-house that we're doing out. However, what we don't have yet, or didn't have when we spit out these reports, is the report to show that we did finally get rural aid numbers. So rural aid is going to be about $140,000, and we've had zero conversation, for good reason, about spending it. So that will definitely go towards our transportation concerns. And we'll just know that a good chunk of what's showing here is over, will be taken care of with rural aid. So we're thankful that we get rural aid. And any given year, I'm not sure we're going to get it, but we are getting it. The numbers finally came out. Sturbridge falls in, when they do the rural aid calculations, Sturbridge falls in tier 3. So if the funds, if the figures are not fully funded, they hit the tier 1 and the tier 2, and tier 3s would start falling out. It's also a question of a calculation, which the first calculation is based on students per square mile. And there's a threshold there of, I think it's 35.
But in that range, yeah.
I do know that I caution us to continue to not plan on getting and spending rural aid, because one of, not my 6 districts, but a neighbor, did go from $200,000 last year to 0. So it's not like there's even a weaning off if you have been getting it. So being in that tier 3, we're great this year. But as we're talking about next year, we continue to not count on that. But other than that, that's the only number there in your general finances that certainly is concerning when you see that big negative. But we wanted to be realistic and say that could be worst case, so let's put it out there. and know that we at least have a plan to cover it, and on we go from there.
One question about special ed tuition.
Mhm.
That looks to be about 50,000 less than it was for our, was it December or November?
Yes,
December meeting.
We've re-looked at what we're gonna get for circuit breaker and made sure that we're gonna spend all of the circuit breaker funds, and then what's left, we put in the
Okay,
budget.
so you think that this is pretty accurate at
Yes.
this point?
It was accurate as of, well, it's almost a month ago now that we met. So we meet each month and we look at a couple of things. A, we want to confirm the state circuit breaker figures are going to hold, and B, things inevitably in a building this size. Reminder to those who are new to us that the tuitions that are in this budget are for not only elementary students but also secondary. So often we've seen movement that Kathy doesn't even know because it's not a student that she's aware of on her radar at all. So it is, I would say it's uncommon to go a whole month without something having changed a little bit, but nothing significant at this point in time, so feeling okay. Any other questions?
I was thinking, because we were getting over our own health issues in my household, but
Mhm.
some of these numbers, like for nursing supplies, materials, are coming already pretty close. Is this on track with previous years? Still? Yep, okay. I also, the lovely sign as you walk in the building by the nurses off the B's of the nurse's office also got me thinking about this. It's a good sign.
Yeah.
Take a look if you missed it. Yeah. So if that's on track, that was a question I had.
Yeah, it's pretty common that most of our supplies would be front-loaded. On rare occasion, when things are really in trouble from a budget perspective, maybe twice in our tenure, I'm like, okay, sorry, in August you cannot order 3/4 of the year of supplies, even classrooms, because we're afraid we're gonna get cut every now and then when they talk about 9C cuts. But for the most part, even because we go out to bid sometimes, so they'll front load the far majority of the year's worth of supplies early in the year, get it in, get it put away, and then we're just looking at what else might come up. So, not uncommon. Mhm.
Okay, so if there are no other questions or discussion points, we need to motion to accept the financial.
No.
report. We can go on to communications then.
Which is just the note, the only communications other than I shared with you all we do, which is interesting, I don't believe you also get that in your mail, correct? A lot of the mail that comes to us from MASC for all of you, you've also gotten at home. But I don't believe the lovely calendars you got mailed to you,
And
right?
some of the MASC stuff does not come from the system.
Okay,
And then
yeah.
this report is almost always electronic, I think.
Yes, so that's it. Other than the calendars that I handed to you, this was sent to you from Carol before the holidays, FYI, because it's a longer one. We're trying not to kill trees, but we do legally need to put a note here that we did distribute it to you all. So just that electronic.
Any questions about that? Okay, so we can go on to the principal's report both for December and January.
There we go.
It's noted.
Exactly, right. Happy New Year, everyone. I am going to, if it's okay with the committee, is just to go through each one of my sections for each month, because there'll be some overlap there, if that's okay.
Yes.
So just starting off with enrollment, we are at 852 at this point, but I know that we placed 3 more students today, so that number will go up. Recognitions, I want to extend our thanks to Jenna Ventuola, Samantha Nowak, Erin Weed, and Lydia Lucas, the House of Destiny and Quabog Lake Association for offering over 30 Burgess families Thanksgiving dinners. The Burgess After School Enrichment Program is held on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Just again, thank you to Tammy Edmonds for coordinating that program. It was well attended. And Lucy Caldwell and the band, Burgess Band, performed the national anthem at the Worcester Railers game back in November. So thank you to Lucy for organizing that. On to the December recognitions. Thank you to the same folks that I mentioned above, as well as Deb St. Laurent staff and families who helped support over 20 families with food and gift cards during the holiday season, the December holiday season. And thank you to Lizzie Caldwell and Brianna Embry for making our holiday concert successful. Curriculum instruction and assessment, parent conferences were held in November, and report cards were issued electronically on Friday, December 13th. Access testing for English language learners start December 8th, and mid-year benchmark assessment window opens January 13th. As we do have a number of our PTO and volunteers here, as well as folks on the committee who have helped on various events that I'm going to mention now. Scholastic Book Fair was held the week of December 18th and sold over $24,000 worth of books and gifts. It was the most successful book fair we've had to date, and I want to thank Katie Lynn Gendron and all of the folks that helped her run this really successful event. Additionally, back in November, there was a PTO-sponsored Condesa fundraiser where folks go to Condesa and 10% of the proceeds would come back to the school. The Railers Night that took place back in November that I previously mentioned had over 270 people in attendance, which was wonderful, Paige. And the holiday shop had record sales this year, making over $14,000 to support our grade 6 celebration. So thank you to all of those folks who are present. Yeah, Jackie, Caitlin, I'm sorry. Yeah. Thank you. Professional development back in November. We're all set. Cookie Walk was resurrected this year. A little bit different iteration, but I do want to thank Paige and the PTO for bringing back that wonderful tradition. It was well received by families, so we're anxious to see that moving forward. Professional development, there is a professional development early release day in January on the 10th, and it's actually not a menu, it is a presenter. And I think that that's everything here for me. You've got all of your wonderful updates by grade level and department to review when you have a chance. Are there any questions? No. Thank you.
So the main event for me, other than welcome back, Happy New Year, hopefully we had some rest and relaxation and dodging of household illnesses. I was very happy to have a week and a half of no frozen pipes, which is coming burst. It is always the worry when the buildings are not as active as worrying about the heat and the water and the pumps, but we made out okay. So the main event tonight is your first look at the fiscal 26 budget, which I think you all have in your packet, yes? So we'll go page by page. Kathy and I will talk about highlights or lowlights, things to bring to your attention. Process, I think this is Lindsay's first year, so I've got to do the process talk. This is the first time that this is all about school committee asking questions, making sure they understand this first pass, it is your meeting. It is possible that you will ask questions that we don't have the immediate answers to, and we will get back. If there's a question we say we'll get back to all of you. There's no action taken tonight. Next month when we come back in February, we'll review anything that we might have left unknown. We'll update if anything has changed. By then we usually know what the initial state Chapter 70 funds look like, because that usually comes, the initial governor's budget comes out the end of January. So we'll update you on everything we know, and then at the February meeting, you will vote the budget to move forward to the March public hearing. So it's still not necessarily etched in stone, it's not for sure what you want to send to town meeting, but it's what you're comfortable moving forward with. So we can change things between now and February. Between February and March, you would not typically increase. It certainly happened that we've gotten to March and we've decreased, either because things have changed or we find out the town is really struggling and has certain issues. But the goal usually is to really be talking about only potential decreases or going with wherever we went into it in March. Your legal obligation is by March public hearing to vote the total dollar amount that you want to send forward to the town to put on the warrant for your ask for next year. Continues to be you and you alone that can change things within lines of that total dollar, but that's what's going, the whole point of that public hearing is to try and get the public to come and ask questions about your line items then, as opposed to a town meeting when there are as many line items in the school as there are in that total document there. So no action tonight other than asking questions, feel comfortable. Summary out of the gate, I think we're feeling pretty good. The total budget that we're going to present to you is up 2.69%, which I feel good when we're coming out of the gate under 3%. I'm not saying that I'm not speaking for the town. In fact, I've already heard some concerns on other departments causing the town to be, or the town financial situation being a little concerning. Town administrator and finance director are projecting a difficult budget year. Doesn't surprise me. I think the state's projecting a difficult budget year, but I think this budget is not asking for anything new. It's asking for, we talk more about level services than level staff, because sometimes to continue offering the same service and programs, sometimes an adjustment in staff or down could go. But knowing the students that we have now and anticipate having next year, we're going to go through what we think we need to continue everything that we've got going on here. In your packet, I think you had the whole kit and caboodle. The first 7 or 6 pages is ultimately the document that will end up going to public hearing. So we're going to go into the document that has a little more detail. It's the second half, I think, of your packet, and it starts with page 1 of 7. First thing up top says 1000 series, and they're all landscape right now. Recording secretary, are we all there? Yeah, yeah, we didn't copy
So
it.
it's
It
not
was just the
the
line.
one.
Yeah, it's the page 1 will have the total administration 1000 series at the bottom. Oh, and I'm looking at my copies. Is it only, if that's
like
right,
it's
but everything
yeah,
else looks okay?
right,
Right, so you might have 2 of page 1s, we're not asking for double. All right, we all there? Okay, so Kathy and I will kind of go through this first one. Is the crux of this, up top is any expenses for you folks, your dues, conventions. We don't anticipate the need to increase that. We can level that as we have for the last couple of years. The crux on this page here is the central office budget that those of you that were able to attend the November meeting, this is Burgess's share of that budget chopped up into 6 pieces. Little note on the side, Burgess's share of that whole budget is down a bit to 24%, 24.41, as opposed to 25.35, and we've talked about that a little bit since the beginning of the year, that the enrollment in this building is a little lower. So that, when you look at the enrollment district-wide, has resulted in Sturbridge's enrollment and piece of the pie being a tiny bit smaller, which is great, because as the end result there is, this section, this whole page is only up, it's not even a full $1,000. And that is because of your shift down in the percent share, not because central office was a decrease or even a level. Any questions on that?
Can you remind me that communications is to 0 because that's moving?
Correct, because what we did with that, the student support compliance and coordinator salary is up a little bit, and that position
Yeah.
is the one that will be year-round and will take on the communications, and I'm calling it webmaster, whether that's what we ultimately saying,
I knew
but
it went somewhere.
there you go.
I remember where.
Exactly, exactly. Anything else there? You're right, actually, my copy has 2 of it. We're moving on to the real page 2, which starts with your principal and assistant salary.
And that says 2000 series.
Correct. And the series, those are state coding series. 2000 is pretty much all direct instruction, your FYI. So what you have here, and then we'll take a peek there. Your principal salaries, that huge increase is because we finally moved that 4th total for the administrator, the student support services position to here, and you'll see later on, it was decreased, it was a position that was, well, actually, the reason we got it was because we had a decrease in we had a number of retirements that helped pay for it. So we are backfilling in the special ed and psychologist area, but with lower salaries. Putting it all where it belongs from a reporting point of view. You will see a number of lines in your ESP group that look leveled or very close to leveled. They're negotiating. So when we get to, there's a line here that we put all of the negotiating pool dollars in, or anticipated, and once that's settled and we start the new year, we'll transfer things to make sure that we don't end up with negatives. But we're not implying that that the admin assistants will have no increase. You can see the admin assistant line. Other than that, Kathy, I think supplies, we're holding okay.
That's fine.
Yeah.
In terms of the substitutes,
Yeah.
do we feel like that's sufficient?
I think so, because remember, this year we added the permanent sub back in.
And
So right now, we're looking like we're okay.
we filled positions that we were subbing to fill before.
Yeah, yeah, we look like we're running at a pretty decent rate right now. Just above that, note that this model has us continuing with your one L teacher. When you go down a little further, the ed assistants is because we've added an assistant as opposed to having 2 L teachers, which last year when we built this budget, we were talking about that.
Similar to that, the number here for pupils is 930. We haven't hit 930 in several years.
Yeah,
So
and-
this is aspirational, or is this to be
It's to be
careful,
safe,
like
Yeah.
financially
Mhm.
careful?
Yeah, so she's rounded up in her projections.
Yes.
None of them are, like, if they were, see, you could see the kind of 110 or 115. So
Yeah.
she's looking at current class sizes, rolling them up.
Yeah.
Pre-K and kindergarten is always a complete, I wouldn't say complete, but it really is a guess.
Yes.
Until we get a little closer to.
Grade 1 being more so, and that's when you look at the reports, you'll see, like, the numbers in K are down, but,
Yes.
you know, we always anticipate influx into grade 1.
Yes.
And we also, want to keep class sizes manageable, especially if
Right.
there's low grades.
And then you've got that one, that blaring large class that currently 5th, going to 6th, and then after that, unless things change significantly and there's a whole lot of move in,
Yeah.
we're kind of in a lower level.
13, yeah, I mean, if you
Yeah.
just look comparatively, it's really not as far off, yeah.
Other than that, it's level staffing. The note there, we did a couple of years ago see a drop in our Title I funds, but this year it did go back up, so we're anticipating what we got this year for Title I to put towards this. Who knows if anyone dares look at their crystal ball and want to talk about what's gonna happen with federal fundings. I'm just going with optimism right now. I get to be Sally Sunshine today and say whatever happens isn't going to impact us significantly in 1 year, could in 2 or 3.
Deb, do we just have the one permanent substitute?
Yes,
Okay, great.
yeah, yeah. What else is happening on that page? I think that about covers it. Will we move on?
I think we're good for the next
Great.
page.
We get to the next page, and supplies, we did okay. We upped it a little bit this year, so we think that we can hold with that. Your speech and language and your assistants are based on, so we'll do the teachers first. Your professional speech teachers and your speech and language are based on your current people, where they will be contractually next year. So you've got a number that are, a few years ago, you had a complete senior staff. But you've got a number that are rolling, so there's the percentage as well as the movement. And that's really all that's causing there's not an increase there. Your classroom assistants, that's the line that covers this, I believe the 18 maybe is the same as what we had this year or had we budgeted this year. But I wouldn't say majority, but a chunk of the increase there is because that is where we put a pool of dollars that covers the entire ESP negotiation. And then we'll move things out of there. So it looks like a big bump. To have a 10% bump on a single line is usually something that causes, our finance folks will certainly ask. I know Kevin Smith well, he will call us out on that one. But that's got the negotiation pool also. Okay? The positive, right underneath that, your contracted services, that's when we have to outsource for OT, PT, teacher of the deaf and blind, music therapy. So based on, there has been a little turnover in the OT pool, so that decreases the cost of labor, but also the population. I think you have a couple of students, we might see a bump up at the Tantascwa end as you have some students that are moving up there. So, but that's good news, at least for the year, right? Anything else, Kathy, there? Under your textbooks, next year will be, it'll be the second year of the bridges, but it'll be, we're gonna make the third year of payment, because last year, at the end of the year, we used some of your rural aid to make year one. So this was year two to kind of get ahead of the game. So the good news is, next year when we make year three, we'll be set. And we won't have, it's a 6-year commitment, but for payment over 3 years, so we'll have a few years of looking at what else might be happening in the curriculum or textbooks area.
What's happening with science? Just a little bump there.
Science?
Yeah, so we're, curriculum is changing, and we will be using the state recommended Open SciEd, which is actually a free resource but requires supplies.
So we anticipate that that would be moving forward.
Correct.
That will stay.
Yeah. And actually, it's somewhat of a moving target. We'll know better as we get into it. I know science coaches are meeting this week.
Deb, can I just go back a second?
Yep.
When you, the special ed classroom assistants,
Mm-hmm.
where's the 18 coming from? Because on the first page, the education assistants, we have 8.
They're separate.
Oh, they're
So
just, okay.
they're
Got
two
it.
separate pools. So
Okay.
18 directly connected to special ed services, IEPs, 504s. They could be in any of your classes across your, the majority of your ed assistants are your kindergarten assistants.
Okay.
And then also in there, the English learner instructional assistant, and one more, and your education clerical assistant. So they're not, their reason for existence is not special ed. The ones that are special ed we want to put there because we are required to report the
Those are
difference.
two different categories. Got it.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep,
Okay,
but
thank
the
you.
same contract.
Got it. Oh, okay. All
Yeah.
right.
Good questions. Anything else? We looked down in your technology.
Is that just a contractual bump for technology specialists?
Correct. Yep. And the assistant is big part of the negotiating year. We will get to, I hope, unless we did great. The 90,000 that we're continuing in tech hardware is on your capital plan that we'll get to at the end. What the hopes are to do with that. Your library media, still the same professional salary. Again, negotiating. The assistant and everything else seems to be holding okay as far as costs and needs and subscriptions.
Sorry, are those 2 assistants that we just referenced, is that part of the pool that we
Correct.
put? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yes, exactly.
The 18
Yeah, we're not
students.
decreasing. Somewhere, look, we budgeted for some reason a tad more than needed. If we look, there's a little money sitting there in the
Last year,
budget.
okay.
So no, we're not
So the
getting
18,
anyone cut.
the 18 doesn't include these folks, it's 18
Correct.
plus those folks.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But all the money sits there.
correct.
Yep.
Just the negotiation,
Just the
right. Usually,
negotiation money.
what we
Got it.
typically do is take the staff, look at where they would be next year. So if there's moving steps, we would put that here. And not have anything else, any other COLA or anything. We put that all in one place. Okay. Anything else on that page?
Okay, I think we can move to the next page, which I see is number 4.
Yep, yep. You've got your 3 guidance/adjustment counselors. there's certifications are school counselors, sometimes they're adjustment counselors, it's like all over the place. But it's the crew, the great crew. And your STAR assessment seems fine. I think last year we bumped that up a little bit, or you were the only one that budgeted it right.
That's correct, the last one.
Because I know all of the others, we had to have a bump this year. And everything else is okay there?
And the translation is holding steady.
For right now, yeah.
Yep, yep. Your psychologist salary, so that's where you see the decrease in your psychologist, because the person was being paid there last year that moved into your administrator. And then the team chair position is part of the increase in your special ed teacher salaries, because that's really where, from a state reporting point of view, the team chair should be. So that we're really just dealing with actual psychologists delivering psychologist services.
Right,
at this
because
point.
prior, our team chair was also a school psychologist, so that's why it landed there initially, but it really does belong elsewhere.
Anything else there?
Any questions? I think we can move
Great.
to page 5.
So 5, you've got your nursing department, your contracted nursing, that the nurse assistant really should be plural or 2 in the column there. So you've got 2 folks, that covers the 2. They also are part of the negotiation pool going on right now. However, you've got 1 new person this year. The salaries, they're folks moving up steps as well as change in staff in that office. So we reflected what those changes will be without dealing with any additional contractual changes. Make sense?
I was going to ask about that. Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then we feel comfortable enough with the supplies, Mary, that we leveled it.
Okay,
We get to the end of the year, we'll have some other conversations.
that works.
Great.
It's a really good sign by the nurses out. It got me very
That's
concerned.
great. That's great.
Everyone should read all the bees.
All right, the bees count. So then we get into the transportation, which is us projecting, trying to build 14 routes at rates that we anticipate we will end up ending negotiations, and we'll talk a little bit and give you updates on that in executive session, but that's what's happening there, knowing half of the total, so this is really just Burgess's half. Off on the side is another half plus that goes to Tantascwa budget in terms of their transportation costs. We get down to the bottom though with your specialized transportation, and we have started calling it specialized as opposed to special ed because it does include homeless transportation or vocational. You do not have
There's no
any students in Sturbridge that go anyplace other than Tantascwa Regional Vocational, which is awesome, because there were years where there'd be a couple that'd be going to Bay Path, or some could go to Pathfinder or Smith Vocational, which is always a struggle. So we're, again, knowing how short we are right now, we have to at least plan some increase. Will that be enough? Not sure, but we'll figure out, we'll work our way through. We are certainly working on trying to get a little more in-house capacity in that special ed fleet, but that's a pretty big fleet, so at some point in time, sometimes we just need to contract out, but as it shifts, we're always looking to get it back in.
Deb, this
Yep.
year, for buses,
Yep,
we had contracted out to McCarthy for 1 route.
Continue to.
Are we anticipating that we will do that next
for
year?
next year, this is not built on that.
Not built on that.
It's not
This
built
is
on that.
saying we can hire our own.
We are optimistic. Now, again, if we can't, we would be using those anticipated salaries to at least put toward the cost of contracting out. But
Okay.
we are trying to be optimistic and go from there,
Okay.
okay?
And then the other question was about the bus replacement?
Yeah, the buses themselves, so we have forever replaced 2 a year. You've got a fleet of 20 to 22, 2 a year gives you 10 years of age each time. We did a couple of years ago when we were in a little bit of a partly financial crisis here, but also national crisis in producing the buses,
Yeah, right.
that we couldn't even get them. So you can see a couple of years ago, we only got 1. And now we're back up to 2 a year with an anticipated increased cost.
and the 135 is for one.
Oh, for one.
It's for
Yeah.
what?
But-
My
because
notes- I have to
you'll
check
only
my-
pay
I have
for
to clean
one.
up my notes are for the
You'll
whole
pay for
bucket.
one, Tantasco will pay for one.
Oh, okay.
So what you don't see in our summary document, you do see it. The summary document shows the total cost and then has this big fat minus of like $400,000 that Tantasco paid. Here on this detail, we're really only looking at the Burgess budget.
And I will fix the notes so that it's properly reflected.
Okay.
Actually appreciated your notes, they were very helpful.
Yep, yep, and here's the thing, we go back and forth, Kristen and I have gone back and forth 3 times this year.
Uh-huh.
We like using the notes, when we're building it, sometimes we use the notes and we put people's names in there because we wanna remember who we're charging to what line. And then I'm like, we don't want the
So now
notes to
we
go
have-
out with names,
So
so
we
now
have notes for you guys, and then we have a note.
then we have the extended.
Okay, well, I appreciate the notes, I
Yeah.
find them to be helpful.
Great, great, awesome.
Okay.
Anything else on that page? That school SRO is just there, we will hide it going
Yeah.
forward. It is, again, Kristen's great job of trying to be consistent. All the other 4 elementary schools has an SRO line, that's how they fund some SRO. Your town budget through the police department funds the SRO.
I like it there, because
It acknowledges that it happens. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm okay with it there.
Okay, great.
Are we good
No,
to
all
go to
good.
page 6? Okay, page 6, please.
Okay, your current staff, FTEs of custodians, but they also are in this lovely, large contract that we're gonna be negotiating. So we put there based on your current folks and where they'll be next year in their steps. This year, we think we're gonna hold with fuel. We have not gone out to bid yet, I don't think, for next year's rate.
No.
So we go out through French River and they'll be going out shortly. So, again, a little bit of optimism. Last year, for the year we're in, it was a rate lower than last year, so it feels like it's a little leveled off, so we're gonna do that. Electricity, we bumped up this year, because when we look at fiscal '24 expenses, they were higher, so leveling, I think, will be fine. Water and sewer, we've had a hard time trying to figure, it feels like it's a moving target, depending on the weather and how much watering we have to do, so, and I don't believe the town has increased rates in a couple of years, so we bumped up a little bit there to be safe. Sometimes we get educated at the public hearing on that, because the finance folks know what's going on. Other than that, we seem to be holding, we've done a pretty good job of keeping up with the building needs as they come up, so that we should be in good shape with all of the other lines, the maintenance lines. We will at the very end go through the proposed requested school projects in the capital plan.
Any questions?
All right.
Page 7.
Then it's the page that often causes us all agita and heart stopping, but knock on any piece of wood you can find. We feel a bit stable right now. It is a little bit, the cautionary tale is January to February are, I would say, when we most often find students that we find out need to be placed elsewhere or aren't going to work out in the placements they're on. Sometimes the holidays are not awesome for some of these students, and getting back afterwards sometimes is very hard for regulation, or we've tried for half a year to work out in a particular placement in or out house, and that just seems to be when we find out that something isn't. But right now we're optimistic. We feel like we have a good handle on the students where they're at. So we've budgeted based on that, projecting what we think the rates will be next year, because all of the outside placements get to change their rates. But we're anticipating getting more circuit breaker, so that the net result there is that this section that sometimes can really blow us out is actually saving us. That down $100,000 puts us closer to where we were last year when we budgeted. So that's great. We'd never come into a budget and say, let's anticipate we're gonna have 2 more kids at expensive tuitions, we just don't do that. But it does leave us sometimes when it happens, a little concerned, so this looks pretty good right now.
So do we have less kids going to private schools, or is it aging out?
We have 1 aging out, and we have more circuit breaker money coming from the state, which allows us to ask for less from the town.
Yeah, because what we're seeing is not necessarily the cost, it's just what the town will
Correct.
contribute to whatever
Correct.
cost. So
Yeah.
the cost may have gone up.
Yeah, most of the circuit breaker dollars we tend to put towards those very expensive private tuitions. So, you can see here, your collaborative placements are, and those are usually your GROW, your Southern Worcester County collaboratives are about the same. It looks like there's 1 more in district between Sturbridge, Brookfield, and Brimfield, by the looks of these. And again, we're not gonna project another private placement, but the current ones that we have, there is 1 aging out. That brings us to round 1. Again, the total 2.69, what we have done for many years is this breakout at the end that we don't go to town meeting, we don't ever want to be having big public conversations about one population versus another in the building. But we do like to break out and say, because as you can see, for example, in 2024, we got a 6.9% increase, which was, for those of you who were sitting on this committee, was heartbreaking to ask for, but very much appreciated the town supporting us. But we had to show that it wasn't your regular operations. We kept that down to reasonable expectations. It was the special ed, both in-house and out, that was really driving that increase. And we didn't want to penalize our other programs because we needed to take care of students in different places. So that helps us know where we're at this year. As we just talked, the special ed actually is down, but our regular ops is reasonable. There's movement going on, there's steps. So, yeah, and transportation. Yeah. If there are no questions there, we'll at least go through the last 2 pages and just talk about what we're hoping, what's in that budget anyway, from a capital point of view, is, I think the first page here is the non-technology, and then we go into technology. So there's just a few. It's the continued 5,000 for emergency management upgrades. That is really the computer system and being able to remotely track what's happening with the boiler, et cetera. This is why we don't have things blow out while we're away for a week and then come in and find out we've got leaks. So that is needed.
Does that include, was there an issue with communications, like walkies weren't working or something? Does that fall under emergency management?
No, so that would come, if there are walkies that aren't working and we need more, we get that from your building maintenance supply lines. Yeah. Parking lots, what are we after at parking lots, Kathy, do we know?
We're just planning on parking lots. Yeah.
You've got a number of guardrails that are broken that we're working on trying to repair. That Cedar Street entrance, you can see there's some broken down there that we'd like to try and take care of.
But we do need resurfacing too, so.
Yep.
And then the HVAC.
And the HVAC, your system is getting older and needs some kind of just a preventative maintenance overhaul on some of its parts. It's in good shape, but if we don't plan to take a look, it's hard to say, and we've had problems for years convincing folks, just because it's not broke doesn't mean we shouldn't replace it. It's old, so we don't want to wait till it breaks. So there's a little bit of that going on in your HVAC system. Yeah. So that was that line there under your projects in your building operations is the 60,000. The next page is the 90,000 that shows up under technology, the hardware line. And we're looking to
Mobile devices.
which is your Google, your Chromebooks.
Or any other type.
Yeah.
Yep, mobile device. And the major infrastructure that you'll see we've maintained that 65,000. That keeps us in good shape. Greg also does believe that number will be adequate to make sure that we're updating things. Again, to speak to Deb's point, you don't wait till something is broken, you actually proactively replace.
And then if we're able to do that, the next few years after that look okay.
Yeah, we'll see.
And then we just gotta remember, you know, every 10 years or so, these servers and switches need to be reviewed and go through. Okay. If you think of anything else, don't hesitate. You know, you get home and gee, I wish I had asked. Don't hesitate to shoot us an email. We'll get back to you. We'll come back next month and let you know how the state's looking. By then, I will probably have heard a little. I shared this number with Barbara Berry. The town's got a little bit more anxiety going right now because the town meeting is so early this year. So this is their first year going from a June town meeting back to April, which rolls everybody else's job up early. So when they're trying to plug things in, I did share this with Barbara, saying, I'm giving you a number, but I have not reviewed this with the school committee, so don't go anywhere with it. Tantasco's even harder to guess because Tantasco is a result of whatever Chapter 70 money they get before we then send out assessments. So it's even harder to try and project on that. But it will be a tighter turnaround for Sturbridge than it has been. I've spent the last couple of years going to see your finance committee in April, sometimes right after this meeting in April. I know by February they're going to be trying to put it all together. So we'll let you know what else we hear by. Unfortunately, our meeting was early February, not later in February, so we can talk then.
So is that problematic for us, that public hearing isn't until March?
They will say yes, I will say no. We meet the law, first of all. Law requires that the schools have a public hearing and that they send to the town their budget ask no less than 45 days before the town meeting.
Oh, we're real
So
close then.
we're Tantasco's even closer.
Okay.
So we've always, because we meet the first week, we're okay. Of course, they'd love it earlier, but we meet legal obligations, but we'd still like to share as much as we can as early as possible. And back in the day, it was April before it was June. So the first 5, maybe 10 years of my tenure here, we worked it for April. So it has been done, it can be done. We just communicate as much as we can, and I don't want to overstep and share things I haven't shared with you folks, but we certainly want to work with the town. Okay. Alrighty, until next month on the budget, that is it for the superintendent's report.
Good, thank you. So I think we can move to public access then, if there's any questions or things to share.
Deer in headlights?
I just want it to be a fly on the wall.
There you go. Excellent, thank you for coming.
Okay.
Well, seeing no remarks, we can move to my rural
Yep.
committee. So in December, we got the numbers and we had a snow day, so I couldn't share them, but you've described it very well. All of the towns that feed into Union 61 count as rural. Sturbridge is within that tier 3, meaning if you think of it as like ruralness, we are less rural than, say, Wales, but we are still considered rural, which means we're eligible for these funds. The calculation for what the density does vary from year to year. It's decided by DESI, I do believe, and not the legislature. On January 1, so at that time, the rural committee was like, we're going to send these letters, we're going to start going to talk to legislators, we're really going to do a full front push on trying to get budget numbers to include all these rural towns. January 1, we got an email from the leaders of the subcommittee saying, Karen Spilka, who's a leader of the legislature, has made her speech, made a remark on both in written form and with other legislators, that she's going to be focusing on education funding starting like today, January 2nd. That was not entirely expected. That was why there was this big push starting October, November, December to just be a fly in the wall, a real noisy fly, really buzzing in their ear, like, we need help. We can't cover our transportation. We have ELL kids just like in Boston, pay attention. So it may have worked, to be seen, because then we're hoping that, I mean, if you follow the politics, she's under some scrutiny too, but here now she's shedding this light on education, that maybe she'll put some pressure on Governor Healy to be really thinking about Chapter 70 funding. To be decided. So the next meeting is January 29th. I will report back what they learned from Karen Spilka and others. But that's a victory. That some of that caliber is saying something about education funding and acknowledging not everybody is in an urban district. So whether that will result in anything, I don't know. But that's progress. So that's what I know.
Great.
Tasqua.
I was unable to attend the last.
I'm happy to jump in
Sorry,
a
Deb.
little bit.
Thanks.
Tantasco's December meeting, as always, was a meeting of joy. I do love the December meeting. We start out getting some kind of musical presentation. So this year it was the junior high band. So we start in the auditorium and get just 3 numbers, but I just love hearing from our kids. So that's awesome. Then it's actually the only meeting that we meet at the high school instead of the junior high. So then we go upstairs where Culinary Arts has prepared a little refreshment, and we had some soup and cookies, which is awesome. And then I got to kick the meeting off introducing our superintendent scholars for the year. So the 2 superintendent scholars this year were Jocelyn Maratek from Sturbridge and Orion Boyce from Wales. So they have resumes that just make us look like slackers, and I just love reading that and introducing them. So it's a nice time of year, and it's a reminder of what we do, and I love sharing names here. So Jocelyn worked her way through Burgess, and she's going to do great things. Orion, actually that night, we start the meeting at 6. We do and I knew ahead of time because I had heard from his dad beforehand, but at 6:38, they had already been introduced. We had already given the accolades, and they probably hadn't left the building yet when Orion got notice that he got into MIT. Oh, that's excellent. So they knew that was the night and the time. I couldn't drag the meeting out. Part of me was like, well, what if I did and it didn't end well? But he got it, which is awesome. It's awesome. So, Jocelyn was still waiting to hear from a couple. So that was really the crux of it. Other than that, it was, kind of, we're getting ready for budget, and in January they'll start hitting it hard too. They have a Saturday meeting to go through their budget. We start at 8:30 in the morning on Saturday the 25th and go through it all.
Questions? Okay. We can move to unfinished business then.
So yeah, those few unfinished, which they're exactly what we did last month, and I looked at the notes, I looked at our minutes, and we didn't change anything there.
Well, we didn't meet last month.
Oh, sorry, back in November. This goes back to your November minutes.
Does it matter then that it says second reading adopted for a date
That-
that we didn't meet?
Oh, you mean on the actual policies? They'll change that after we
Okay.
vote. Yes, she'll put the actual today's vote.
Okay.
Yeah. So these first ones are everything that you saw, discussed, and voted on in November. You can choose to do them individually or as a group, whether they be their second readings, no matter what. Some of them are adoptions and some of them are rescinding.
Is there any opinion? Are we good as a group, or do you want to go through, are there things you want to discuss?
I don't have anything to discuss. So.
I didn't either. Okay, so I think we can take them as a group. So this IGA, IGB through the second IGB. We can make a motion.
I would say to adopt or rescind on second reading as presented.
A motion to adopt or rescind on second reading as presented. Do I have a motion? Moved. Second? Okay. All in favor? Okay,
Awesome.
very
Is that
good.
good, Karen? Karen?
Okay, so then our next one is KCD.
Right, so under new business, this is one we sort of tripped on last month and discovered that you don't have. And I think we kind of gave a reveal last month, it was in the packet. So it's probably not your first time seeing it, even though it's the first time on new business that we said we put it on here. And we are suggesting that we vote to adopt it on first reading. It is the same policy that Tantascwa has at this point. I think maybe one of the other elementaries, but we're pushing, I don't know how we missed it at the elementaries, but it's a good one to have. And MASC suggests we do. So we're looking to have that, and also would correct the dates.
Are there any questions about KCD?
No, just a reminder from last time that MASC had, school committee needs to approve any value amount, but we had kind of discussed that it'd be nice to allow the superintendent to accept it if it's under $500, so we're not having to vote to accept petitions.
Right. Yep.
For example. So I don't have any other comments on it.
Great, so why don't we take a motion for this one then? Is there a motion to adopt on first reading? And we have a second. All in favor? Great.
Awesome.
Now, the second one has no,
Right, so and at the time that we sent the packet out, because it's newly created, it is a result of conversation that we had at the meeting back in November.
yes.
I am now, with all the love, going to suggest that we call this file number, or we number it, letter it, whatever, IHAM-2.
IHAM-2.
IHAM-1 is the one with the notification for growth, your health and growth notification. So I thought it kind of fell in line there. If we did hit the -2, we could be good to go. So that being said, if we label it that, then we've put in here for your review, thoughts, discussion. Kathy, we kind of sat together with Jody Barassa. We did a kind of a little trolling out there. We could not find a similar one in other, no one ponied up. MASC does not have one.
Oh, that's great.
Yep, but we use language that we have in some of our other policies or to come up with something that we think, Kathy, you feel comfortable with, yep, right? Kathy is the one that thought the time frame was reasonable to do. We thought it was, we're hoping it meets your concern and really just, it shows a commitment to say if something's gonna come up, we wanna make sure that we let you and parents know. And I think it's kind of gray enough that it's not gonna lock us into something that's gonna hamper how we've been operating.
The way it's phrased.
Mhm.
I think this was a particular concern of Sam's.
Yep.
Given her lived experience.
Yep.
Are
And
there-
I did to that point,
Yeah.
ask Sam when she couldn't make this meeting if she would rather wait on the discussion, and she said, no, I'm comfortable with that draft, I'm fine with a
So
first
she's
reading.
seen it?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Are there any thoughts or questions?
No, my only comment was about the time frame, but Kathy said she felt fine with it, so.
I think the time frame personally does work pretty well, or would work.
We did share it with our resident policy expert before even sending the packet. Hey, take a peek at it, what do you think?
Okay. Let's take a motion then on IHAM-2 to adopt on first reading.
So moved.
Second, okay. All in favor? Great. So we have adopted that on first reading.
Did anyone else have a random extra? I had public
Extra.
participation at school committee meetings
Oh.
in my packet,
Interesting.
but it wasn't
No,
anywhere else.
it was good.
No,
Hmm.
I don't think so.
I don't either. That's a
That's fine, I'll
bonus.
just.
We just know you love policies.
Very good.
All right.
Before we go into executive session, I know that there's been a lot of concerns in the community about the bus situation, and just wondering if you can give us an overview of where we are in terms of
Well, executive session is to talk about their negotiations.
So not the negotiations, just
You know,
how things are
unfortunately,
running.
all I can say is, yes, it's difficult. I've got a number of my peers who are having problems too in other districts. We continue to advertise, we continue to get applicants. We've got 2 that have been training. You've got the regulation hours, you've got the vicious cycle of our trainer could train faster if the trainer wasn't driving. So we are optimistic that the 2 that she's been training are going to be licensed and on the road by the end of January. We went into the break. We think we're going good, and we think these are folks that are going to stay. Issues are definitely not only money from a negotiations point of view, but we are doing everything we can, and what we did agree just before the holidays, we certainly understood at the very beginning of the year. We built an emergency plan, because you should always have an emergency plan when you know you're that tight and didn't have any permanent subs. And the emergency plan, for a variety of reasons, mostly impacted Route 8. At the time, we didn't think we'd be using the emergency plan that often. We certainly, before break, recognized and acknowledged that the number of emergencies is far more than we would have hoped and expected, and have been looking at ways to not impact just the same group of students en route.
Those of us on Route 8, I don't know, I think there's at least one.
Yep.
We
No,
appreciate being.
I get it.
Yes.
So, you know, it's just such a monster of an operation. You want to change, you can only have so many alternate plans, because you need to tell the few drivers that you have that this is alternate plan and they need to learn them all. But we've committed to finding at least another and alternate or shift to another one for a while, so we're working on it.
Totally know and appreciate the impact on our families.
Yeah.
Please know that.
Absolutely.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
I have, for Route 8, I have shared that the emergency plan in my neighborhood is that they're all coming to my
Yes.
house.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Lizzie, you want
No.
to be elected mayor here?
Yeah,
too.
no, I get it, and I'm so
But-
sorry. And-
Well, we have neighbors who are nurses.
Yeah.
They have to go.
Yeah.
And so that was heard, it was appreciated,
Yeah,
and it has gotten better.
yeah.
It really
Okay.
has.
Yeah, it is tough, and again, I mean, we've just truly and Murphy's Law has really beat up on us for about 9 months now, in terms of health and retirement and the economy, and we're doing everything we can, as you alluded to. We call neighboring contractors to ask to contract out. We get laughed at most of the time. We wanted more than one.
Because we had asked for 2.
Right.
And we got 1.
We got one. We called another company who just chuckled and said, we are in the same boat. So we're doing everything we can, but certainly if anybody knows anybody that wants to be a bus driver, we pay them while we train them. So, and we really do love our drivers, but it's,
And they're also
Somebody broke himself, so.
Yeah, it's not an easy job.
no, it's not.
It's not easy.
It's not an easy job. No, it's not. No.
Okay,
So we'll
thank
keep
you.
plugging away.
Yep, thank you for
All
that.
right. Yep.
Well, I think then we'll move to executive.
Yes, so I will say that I was hoping that we would be able to reconvene into open session and have another vote, but we don't. So we're still going into executive session, but if you would read the executive session at the end, just say to return to open session for the purpose of adjournment.
Yes.
We're not gonna do it. I just wanna make sure it's for the purpose of adjournment, because I was going to say, let's go into open session, because I thought we might have a vote to take, but we do not.
Okay.
And then, yep, you'll folks need to roll call into executive session.
All right, so I need to read this.
Yep.
Request to enter into executive session under MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigation position of the public body, and the chair so declares. So I'm going to ask for a roll call vote.
And we're just gonna, and the committee will return to open session for the purpose of adjournment. And then we just let Karen know what that is.
So Burns, yes.
Higley, yes.
Whitney Goodwin, yes. Lindsay Goodwin, yes.
So you're all in favor of moving to open session, or excuse me, executive session.
And we'll just take a 2-minute recess while
Thank you.
folks leave.
Thank you.